Most people believe they're less biased than everyone else, which, funnily enough, is a bias all on its own. Your brain means well, but it's lazy. It adds its own truth to your daily interactions so that everything feels a bit more comfortable. And while that gives you the confidence to look the world square in the eye, it also can make you believe that you're a great driver while half the freeway disagrees. I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 cognitive biases that trick your brain every day. Oh, and before we get started, hit like and subscribe. Trust me, your brain's already looking for a reason to agree with me anyway. 25. The frequency illusion. Have you ever heard a new word or started shopping for a new car and suddenly it's everywhere? Ads, conversations, parking lots. What's really happening is something psychologists call the frequency illusion, or the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. When your brain picks up on something new, it decides that it's now worth paying attention to. From that moment on, you start noticing it all over the place. It happens because of two other biases at work: selective attention, which makes you focus on what feels important, and confirmation bias, which makes you notice more proof of it. And just in case you were wondering, the name Bader-Meinhof phenomenon comes from a man named Terry Mullen. In the 90s, he heard the name of a German terrorist group, the Bader-Meinhof gang, twice in one day, after never hearing it before. He wrote to a local newspaper about the coincidence, and the term stuck. So, if you keep seeing that new car you like, just know the world didn't change. Your brain did. 24. Confirmation bias. Since I've just mentioned it, I might as well talk about confirmation bias next. It's basically your brain's way of saying, I've already decided, now let's go find proof. And there's more than one kind. Confirmation bias by selective exposure, for example, is what happens when you stick to news sources or people who already agree with you. You scroll right past the information that challenges your opinion because it feels easier to stay comfortable than to question yourself. This flaw in our reasoning shows up in a lot of ways. Someone convinced that a certain diet works will remember every success story related to it, but will conveniently forget about all the people it didn't work for. The same thing happens in politics, sports, or even friendships because, well, we all like being right. 23. Omission bias. This one happens when people see harm caused by doing nothing as somehow less bad than harm caused by taking action. The brain prefers the quiet option because it feels safer, even when the outcome is just as bad. Think about someone selling a car they know has engine trouble. They don't lie about it, but they also don't mention it. Many people would see that as less wrong than lying outright, even though both decisions leave someone with a broken car. That's omission bias. We give inaction a moral pass because it looks like the better option. But the truth is, not acting can cause as much damage as acting, and our brains just find that easier to ignore. 22. Negativity bias. People react more strongly to negative experiences, even when something positive carries the same weight. It's the reason one insult can ruin your day while 5 compliments barely balance it out. Psychologists say this habit started out as a survival tool. Thousands of years ago, being alert to threats kept people alive. But today, that same instinct means we focus on mistakes, risks, and worries far more than we need to. It even explains why the news feels so depressing. Bad stories simply grab more attention. Something I learned at newspaper when I was in high school. Man saves cat from tree is far less exciting than 25 die in bus fire. Negativity bias can make us cautious, second-guess ourselves, or assume things are worse than they really are. The best way to fight it is by paying attention to what's going right, not just to what went wrong. 21. Mere exposure effect. Repetition shapes what we like. That's why brands repeat the same commercials, why you keep going back to the same restaurant, and why old playlists hit harder than new ones. It's a whole lot of comfort. Familiar things take less effort to think about, and our minds naturally drift towards what's easy. This psychological bias even shows up in attraction. People often grow fond of coworkers, classmates, or friends simply because they spend time around them. But I'm sure you've heard the saying or seen the meme that everything you've ever dreamed of is just on the other side of your comfort zone. Stick with it too much and you'll miss all the good things waiting just beyond it. 20. Ingroup Bias. We automatically prefer to hang out with the kind of people who share our interests, backgrounds, or cultural and religious beliefs. In-group bias can show up as hiring someone because you think they act like you do, scream for the same team, or simply because you both came from the same place. Sadly, the same instinct can turn into favoritism, tribalism, or even flat-out prejudice. It also ties into something called the out-group homogeneity bias, or the idea that everyone outside your group is the same, while your own group feels full of individuals. Put the two together and you get the classic us versus them mindset that still runs deep in modern life. 19. Hindsight Bias. I knew it! But did you really? Those three words might be the biggest lie we like to tell ourselves. Hindsight bias is what makes us believe we saw something coming when, in reality, we didn't. It kicks in after the fact when our minds rewrite the story in such a way that it feels as if the ending was obvious all along. We ignore all the times we weren't sure about what we were doing, the maybes, or the times we didn't have a clue, and turn them into fake certainty. It's a tendency that cheats us out of the truth because we can't fix what we won't admit we missed. 18. The halo effect. You know how they say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover? Yeah, we still do it anyway. If someone's attractive, we assume that they're probably confident, kind, maybe even smart. If a brand looks elegant, we trust it more. And if someone makes a great first impression, we quietly decide they must have it all together. That is the halo effect in action, and we'll probably never get away from it. Teachers often give higher marks to students they like. Hiring managers lean towards candidates who seem right. Even juries can go easier on people who look polished or friendly. In fact, studies show that attractive defendants are less likely to be convicted, and when they are, they often get lighter sentences. The opposite happens too, and it's called the horn effect. One bad trait can ruin how we see someone entirely. Either way, we stop seeing people as they are and start seeing what we expect to see instead. 17. False consensus effect. I sometimes see this in the comments going both ways, and guys, I love all of you. But there is a common cognitive bias known as the false consensus effect. It's a tendency to believe that most people think the same way that you do. We overestimate how common our opinions or behaviors are because, well, they make sense to us. If you've ever posted something online and thought, everyone probably agrees with this, that's the bias at work. Psychologists say it also boosts our self-esteem. When we believe our views are the normal ones, we feel more grounded and confident. The problem shows up when we meet someone who doesn't agree or says something we can't relate to. Instead of rethinking our position, we usually write them off as far left or far right or wrong or just too far removed from how things really are. 16. The Endowment Effect. Have you ever noticed how the second you buy something it becomes priceless? You could pick up a $5 mug and an hour later refuse to sell it for $20. That's the endowment effect. It makes us value something more because it belongs to us. Economists hate it because it breaks every rule of logic. We're supposed to sell when the price is right, but ownership changes how we think. We overvalue the things we own simply because they're ours. An old sofa, an old t-shirt, even a car you've been meaning to sell. The moment someone wants it, you think, not for that price. I'm doing that now on Facebook Marketplace, but the only reason is because I bought it for this price. Everyone's offering me low. 15. Conservatism Bias. Some people could have a mountain of proof dropped in front of them and still go, I'm not convinced. This psychological bias makes us cling to our old beliefs even when new evidence clearly shows that we should rethink them. It's not stubbornness for the sake of it. It's comfort. The familiar feels safe, and changing your mind means admitting the old version might have been wrong, and nobody likes doing that. 14. Choice overload bias. I regularly spend 15 minutes or more scrolling through streaming options before I finally give up and just rewatch something I've already seen. That's the story of modern life in a nutshell. We can get anything, but that anything somehow turns into nothing. Choice overload sneaks in like that. More options sound exciting until you're paralyzed by them. We think freedom means endless menus and infinite scrolls, but too much freedom just makes us second guess every pick. Did I choose the right meal? The right show? The right job? Sometimes the problem is not knowing what we want. It's thinking we should know when there's just too much to want from. 13. Blind spot bias. Alright, we're about halfway through our list, and I'm sure I've already ruffled a couple of feathers, but guys, you know what? Everybody's biased, and no one likes hearing it. Even the people studying bias are biased, and that's where this one comes in. Blind spot bias means we're wired to spot flaws in other people's thinking faster than in our own. We'll call out hypocrisy on social media before breakfast, but defend our own all day. The fact of the matter is that we all have double standards. There are the ones we have for ourselves and the ones we have for others. The real challenge is admitting it's there before you start thinking that everyone else is the problem. Except me, I'm perfect. Everyone else is wrong but me. 12. The availability heuristic. Every time a story goes viral, your brain takes notes it shouldn't. A headline about a shark attack sticks, so now the ocean feels deadly. Never mind that cows kill more people every year. We do it with basically everything. Hear one about a plane crash and suddenly flying feels unsafe. A friend messes up and suddenly we forget about the 10 years they didn't. We judge risk by what we remember. That's why the things that shook us take the front seat in memory and everything else rides in the trunk. News outlets know this too. The scarier, gorier, or uglier the story, the better the ratings. The same thing drives how we think about crime, politics, and even relationships. I mentioned it earlier, guy saves cat, 20 die in bus accident, 11. Anchoring bias. You remember how I told you that your brain's already looking for a reason to agree with me at the start of the video? Yeah, I was doing my own little bit of magic there. No matter the circumstance, the first thing you hear, whether it's a price tag, a headline, or the start of a YouTube video, always sets the stage for everything that follows. When I said that line, your brain subconsciously decided I might be right, and now everything I say sounds just a little more convincing. We all do it. The first salary figure we hear in a negotiation ends up sounding fair, even if it isn't. The first review we read about a movie leads to expectations. Even restaurants use it. Once I said that line, everything that followed it was seen in a different light. 10. Self-serving bias. You are your brain's favorite client, and it loves to protect you. It makes you take credit for the victories and blames circumstances for everything else. Got the promotion? Hard work pays off. Didn't get it? The boss plays favorites. We rewrite everything that happens to us faster than an editor on a deadline. It's not even about lying. It's about staying sane. If every mistake was on us, we'd never leave the house again. So, we deflect the blame a little. Maybe a lot. But it keeps us from seeing what actually went wrong. I mean, think about it for a second. How often do you really say, yeah, that one's on me. I bet you don't do it enough. Every once in a while, try saying, maybe I messed up. It doesn't feel good. In fact, it feels awful. But it's the key to keep growing. 9. The Ostrich Effect. This one pretty much describes itself. The term comes from investors who stop looking at their portfolios when the markets start falling. But it doesn't stop there. People skip doctor's visits when they're scared of bad news. They avoid reading news that stresses them out, or they forget to weigh themselves during a diet. It's all the same thing. If we don't see it, it can't hurt us, right? The problem is ignorance has interest rates. Bills pile up, health issues get worse, and opportunities slip by because we'd rather not look. One study found that nearly half of US adults don't even know the interest rate on their credit cards. Ignorance is not bliss, guys. At some point, not knowing stops being comfort and starts being self-sabotage. Although, fun fact, ostriches don't actually bury their heads in sand, so maybe we should rename that one. 8. The Gambler's Fallacy. If you play heads or tails and the coin ends up on tails 5 times in a row, what are the odds that the next one ends on heads? The odds will always be 50-50. Most people know that's true, but we still bet on heads anyway. We start thinking that if something's gone one way for a while, it's bound to go the other way soon. That kind of thinking keeps people at slot machines, chasing losses they'll probably never win back. But even though it's got gambler in the name, it's not only about actual gambling. Someone keeps a terrible client, hoping they'll finally behave differently, or they stay in a relationship that's already run its course. When we let what already happened make our choices, common sense disappears. The only smart move is to look at the odds as they stand now. Nothing more, nothing less. 7. The Dunning-Kruger Effect. A lot of people are convinced they're above average in whatever they do. The strange part is that the least skilled people often rate themselves the highest. Meanwhile, the guys or gals that actually know what they're doing go too far the other way, second-guessing themselves and thinking everyone else knows as much as they do. When you don't have the skill, you usually don't have the awareness to see that it's missing. You think you're nailing it when you're not even close. It's a weird cycle. The people who still have the most to learn think they've already made it, while the ones who've already learned keep wondering if they ever will. 6. Zero risk bias. Whenever people decide to completely eliminate one small risk rather than reduce a bigger one, even when it's not a logical choice, you get zero risk bias. To give you an example, do you remember the toilet paper crisis when COVID first hit? People were filling their cupboards with the stuff like it was free candy. It made no real sense. A year's worth of toilet rolls won't stop a virus, but it gave everyone something to control. In studies, people showed the same instinct. When given two ways to lower risk, most preferred to wipe out a small one completely rather than make a bigger one smaller. We'd rather feel completely safe about one thing than slightly safer overall. 5. Fundamental attribution error. We tend to see other people's mistakes as a reflection of their character, but we explain our own by pointing to circumstances. For instance, if someone else snaps at the cashier, we might decide they're rude. However, if we did it, we were tired or distracted. We know our own stories and the reasons behind our choices, but we rarely know anyone else's. So, our brains fill the empty spaces with assumptions that usually aren't all that generous. It's simply easier to believe that someone's personality is the problem than to think that there might be more going on behind the scenes. 4. Just world hypothesis. When we hear about someone losing their job, getting sick, or being attacked, part of us looks for a reason it happened to them. We assume they must have done something wrong because the alternative, that bad things happen for no reason, feels too illogical to accept. We all want to think the world plays by fair rules. Be good and good things happen. Hurt someone and you pay for it. That belief is comforting until it makes us cruel. The moment your thinking shifts from that's terrible to they brought it upon themselves, or maybe they weren't careful enough, empathy disappears. Once you start believing everyone gets what they deserve, it's easy to forget how much life runs on chance. 3. Overconfidence bias. Alright, on to the mother of all biases. In fact, you'll see it even ties into some of the others I've already talked about, as if one wasn't enough at any given time of the day. This is the one that convinces us we're smarter, safer, more skilled than we really are. It's what probably helped to sink the Titanic, crash the markets in 2008, and blow up a few space shuttles along the way. Overconfidence is sneaky because it doesn't just cloud our judgment, it supercharges every other tendency we've got. Once we start trusting our instincts too much, we stop questioning them altogether. The right kind of confidence pushes you forward. Too much of it blinds you. 2. Recency bias. You can have the best week at work. Then, that one bad meeting on Friday ruins the whole thing. Suddenly you'll tell your better half that you had the worst week ever, like the other 4 days don't matter. That's how our brains work. Recency bias makes us mistake the latest moment for the full story. We get so caught up in what just happened that we lose sight of the bigger picture. Luckily, once an hour or 3 goes by and you've had some time to relax, everything levels out again. 1. Survivorship bias. During World War II, engineers studied bullet holes on planes returning from missions to figure out where to add more armor. The wings and tail were riddled with hits, so That's where they plan to reinforce. Then, statistician Abraham Wald pointed out something that everyone missed. Those bullet holes were on planes that made it home. The ones hit in other places never returned. That's the danger of survivorship bias. We learn the lessons only from what we can see, forgetting about all the other things that didn't survive to be measured. It shapes how we approach everything, from our careers to our creativity, and the fact is, we don't hear from the ones who didn't make it, even if their stories have the real answers. The takeaway is that when we only study what survives, we end up protecting the wrong parts. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. You really, really, truly are what keeps this channel going. But before you go, if you'd still like to spend some time with me, you'll definitely enjoy our related video, 25 Fascinating Facts About the Evolution of Life on Earth. It's packed full of stories about how life keeps finding a way. Thanks, Jeff Goldblum. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.